Hello and welcome back to the NNP Symposium. We are joined this hour by Reverend Dr. Daniel and Harmelink. And Daniel, you're welcome to go ahead and turn on your camera and unmute yourself. There we go. For a historical sketch of Reformation Numismatics from 1983 to 2023. Dr. Harmelink has been researching Reformation numismatics since 1986 and has been the president of the International Association of Reformation Coins and Medals since 2010. And also edited a comprehensive catalog of the largest institutional collection of Reformation coins and medals in 2016. So I dare say we have an expert in the field among us. Reminder for everyone watching, we will be doing a Q&A at the end. You're welcome to send in questions at any time using the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen, but we will be getting to those at the end of the presentation. So I believe that's it for me. I will let you take it away.
Thanks for the introduction. So it's a pleasure to see everyone today, and I'm trying to advance the screen here. Here we go. So today we're going to be talking about kind of a sketch or an overview of the last 40 years in Reformation numismatics. Maybe some of you this is a new field, or you're not familiar with the field, so hopefully this next hour we'll give you some brief sketch of what Reformation numismatics is all about, and developments, advancements, catalogs, collections that have developed over the last 40 years. So about me, as our moderator mentioned, I began the International Association of Reformation Coins and Medals several years ago to promote the study and research on this topic. I'm also executive director of Concordia Historical Institute. We're an archive and historical research facility in St. Louis, Missouri. I'm with Frederick Schumacher, editor of the third edition of Otto Schreiber's Martin Luther and the Reformation in Numismatic Art. This is a catalog of the Mount Airy Reformation Numismatic Collection in Philadelphia that has yet to be published, but the photographs are done, and we're just looking for permission to publish or make public those photographs. I'm also the editor of the Reformation Coin and Medal Collection of Concordia Historical Institute. CHI has the largest institutional collection of Reformation coins and medals, and so we came out in 2016 with a comprehensive, complete catalog illustrated with color photographs throughout. I've also worked with German medalists to design several modern Reformation-related commemorative art medals on Martin Luther and Jan Hus. So what is the significance of Reformation numismatics? I go to Thurman Smith, who wrote a bibliography on the subject in 1995. He writes, "Many view the collecting of coins and their study as an agreeable hobby without realizing that coinage is not only an expression and form of art, but a visual primary source that can supplement research and analysis of the history of Luther and the Reformation." So this is a historian recognizing that numismatics has an important role to play in reconstructing primary source material related to theology, history, culture, art, etc. Henry Grunthal, who wrote in Numismatist in 1943, wrote these words: "Few fields of modern numismatics attracted the attention of collectors so early, or have been studied and published so carefully, as the medals and coins related to Luther and the Reformation." Again, even in the 1940s, it was realized that this is a historically, culturally, theologically, linguistically rich area of study in coins and medals. And then I make the claim, I don't know, it could be challenged, there are more coins and medals related to the person and work of Martin Luther than any other person in history. And later we'll talk about what is the scope, how many of these actual medals have been minted or struck in the last 500 years. So we'll talk about four major sections today. First of all, defining the scope of Reformation numismatics, always a good place to start. As far as a broader scope or a narrower scope of collecting or doing research. We'll also talk about advancements in Reformation numismatics in the last 40 years, significant Reformation coins and medals produced in the last 40 years, and finally a summary of, okay, what's some kind of aha observations after presenting this material. So let's talk a little about scope. And again, in the realm of archives, libraries, numismatic collections, numismatic research, really scope needs to be intentionally thought out and expressed. A few words about what is included and not included in the realm of Reformation numismatics. As each of you know, the scope of a collection or a discipline defines what's in and what's out. And so it is with Reformation coins and medals. Reformation numismatics is often seen as a subset of Protestant coins and medals, pieces that come out of or related to the thousands and thousands of church bodies or church movements that broke with the Roman Catholic Church. With this broader scope, coins and medals related to the 16th century Huguenots in France or the 15th century Waldensians in Bohemia could be included in a collection or in a study. Moreover, a looser definition of the Reformation would allow interest in collections of Reformation coins and medals related to, for example, Savonarola, who was a reformer or tried to reform the Roman Catholic Church centuries before Martin Luther, Nicholas von Zinzendorf and his experiment in Christian society and Christian missions at Herrnhut, Johannes Gutenberg, who has a direct connection to the Lutheran Reformation of the 16th century, Erasmus of Rotterdam and the European Renaissance that again contributed to the right climate in which the Lutheran Reformation began and flourished. And also the Emperor of the Holy Roman Empire during the Lutheran Reformation, Charles V. All of these could be included in a study or in a collection using this broader scope. But properly speaking, Reformation numismatics is primarily centered on numismatic pieces directly related to the Lutheran Reformation in the 16th century Saxony, and the subsequent people, church bodies, events who are connected with the reforming work of Martin Luther and his teachings. So even with a tighter scope, it's complicated, or it's broad enough. So even with a tighter scope, you would get these kind of subheadings when it comes to Reformation numismatics. Jan Hus, who was burned alive 100 years before Luther, and this connection between Jan Hus and Luther is a very tight one. And so even with a narrow scope, Jan Hus appears in collections and research. Also in the 16th century, during the life of Luther, these double-headed satirical medals of the Reformation were produced by Lutherans and then countered with Catholic versions disparaging the other theological side. Coins and medals of Frederick the Wise. This was Luther's prince who protected him from being arrested and put to death, and other Lutheran princes in Germany who adopted Lutheran practice and belief. Gustavus Adolphus, the King of Sweden, who defended the Lutherans. He's often called the defender of the Lutheran faith, and his death in Germany subsequent to Luther's death. Also, we have pieces that are connected to the artist and artwork of Lucas Cranach, who was the prime Lutheran artist of Luther's period in the 16th century. He had his studio in Wittenberg, Germany. Also, Matthias Grunewald, who is known for his oil paintings and Lutheran altar pieces. and Hans Reinhardt, who produced beautiful medals at the time of Luther. Collections and research would also include Katharina von Bora, who married Martin Luther. She actually has medals dedicated just to her and is a personality of the Reformation in her own right. The pieces would also include commemorations of the Augsburg Confession, the first Lutheran confession in 1530, and subsequent Lutheran confessions. Also the Radical Reformation, so-called Radical Reformation, including Thomas Müntzer and the Peasants' War. Also John Calvin and the development of the Calvinist branch of Protestantism. The Swiss Reformation, including Zwingli. The Catholic Counter-Reformation is evidenced in numismatics, a very interesting subset of Reformation coins and medals. The wars between Lutheran and Catholic forces, especially the Schmalkald wars or the Schmalkaldic wars. Peace medals after wars between Catholic and Lutheran forces were struck to commemorate the peace. Also, the Salzburger immigration, where Lutherans were expelled from Salzburg in Austria and found refuge in Saxony and or Prussia, and also in Dutch and later in Georgia in the United States. And finally, Lutheran musicians, Johann Sebastian Bach and Paul Gerhardt, and others that identify themselves with the Lutheran faith. We also have thousands and thousands of medals that were struck to commemorate the date on which the Lutheran Reformation was adopted by a specific town or city. For example, in the city council in Erfurt, Germany, observes April 7th, 1521 as the day the Lutheran Reformation came to Erfurt. Major anniversaries of this event have been commemorated by the civic leaders of Erfurt ever since. Thousands of towns and villages in Europe and Scandinavia commemorate the Reformation arriving and being accepted in their own town or village with distinctive commemorative medals struck on the major anniversary dates. And this is one of the reasons why there are so many Reformation coins and medals. It's each town would have their own date and their own commemoration as the Lutheran theology or Lutheran teachings came to their locale. So we get to the big question: how many Reformation coins and medals are actually out there, or how many have been struck or cast? A succinct answer is no one really knows. However, the best guess from the experts who have studied Reformation coins and medals for decades, including Klaus Peter Borsatis and others in Germany, have posited a total between 6,000 and 8,000 pieces. And again, that's a kind of an educated guess. So the last 40 years, what's been going on? What are trends? What are some notable features to talk about this hour? Let's begin with the year 1983, and that's not a haphazard date. That's a date that's been chosen discreetly. It was a special year for commemorations of Martin Luther and the Lutheran Reformation, being the 500th anniversary of the birth of Martin Luther in 1483. This anniversary was not only observed in both East and West Germany, remember there were two Germanys at the time, but also in the United States and in other countries around the world. So right off the bat, we want to note that although in Europe they have both coins and medals commemorating Martin Luther, in the United States there has never been a coin or currency that's included the image of Martin Luther. The closest that we got was in 1983 when the United States Post Office issued a Martin Luther stamp, and even that was protested by some Roman Catholics who said, why are you doing this in the United States? But maybe you remember, if you were around in 1983, you remember this stamp when first class postage for a letter was 20 cents. East and West Germany struck both coinage with Lutheran Reformation themes in 1983, and private mints in Europe and Scandinavia also struck and cast commemorative Reformation pieces with Luther's portrait prominently displayed. This continued the emphasis on Lutheran themed coins and medals produced to be sold to tourists, especially from the United States. So some of these commemorative medals were focused on this would be great to sell as souvenirs to people coming from America or other parts of Europe. They really were not designed specifically or primarily for local consumption. So here you see one small gold medal that was sold to tourists in 1967, and there were others in 1983 as well, highlighting places that tourists would go and see. It's worth noting that even in communist East Germany, the desire to de-emphasize Luther in favor of more radical Protestant reformers and revolutionaries was only partially successful. Martin Luther was too big a historical figure to make light of, even for socialists who had no desire in highlighting Luther and his distinctive Christian theology. So here you see an East German gold coin. Again, this one's from 1967, but these themes continue into the 80s and 90s. Sporting Thomas Müntzer, who picked up sword to defend his Christian faith in what was then East German territory. But it's interesting that an American collector of Reformation coins and medals changes everything. With 40 years of perspective, it was a 2-day event in Zurich that solidified the place of Reformation numismatics for decades to come. The Spink and Bulova auction of collector Robert B. Whiting, his Reformation coin and medal collection, on the 19th and 20th of April in 1983. The auction catalog of approximately 1,000 pieces quickly became the standard reference work for Reformation numismatics. And I've actually interviewed 2 or 3 people that were at this auction in 1983, and they remember it fondly. And in at least one instance, this auction in Zurich changed the whole trajectory of their collecting and research in Reformation numismatics. For the next 40 years, the lot numbers from the Whiting auction catalog continue to be the standard reference number for many Reformation coin and medal collections and auctions. These Whiting numbers will most regularly be referenced so people can understand, okay, this is the piece that's under review. So it's interesting that an American collector who did so much help in standardizing the Reformation coin and medal universe, you would think someone from Germany would have produced or would be responsible for the most standardized catalog, but it's an American collector, and he was also an accomplished organist on the East Coast. So if you get into Reformation numismatics, the Whiting catalog with the red cover will be standard fare, and it's indispensable as far as reference work when people refer to individual pieces. So back in Germany, there were other efforts to promote and advance Reformation numismatics. The first published significant book was a reprint of an 18th century catalog commonly referred to as Junker. This volume was originally printed in 1706, but contains 213 illustrations and descriptions of another 75 Reformation-related coins and medals. Some pieces that are no longer exist. The second volume was an extensive presentation of Reformation coins and medals by the German church leader Hugo Schnell. This also became a standard reference work in view of its thoughtful introductions, its high-quality photographs, and helpful indices. So again, these are two major reference works that came out in 1983 from Germany. The text is German, but there are common vocabulary that can be easily figured out. After 1983, interest in Reformation numismatics was short-lived. It kind of faded away in the years following 1983. In Europe, local commemorations continued to be observed, and small commemorative medals were produced, but the trend to cast and strike medals for the tourist trade continued to increase in the years leading up to the fall of the Berlin Wall on November 9th, 1989. Again, this creation of Reformation coins and medals just for the tourist trade, that gets stronger before the fall of the Berlin Wall. So we hear about a second American who advances the cause of Reformation numismatics. Stateside, there were efforts to advance the study of Reformation coins and medals. It was in the early 1990s when the private efforts of Mr. Herb Espy, who died in 1995 of Wilmington, Delaware, came to light. Espy had been collecting medals since the early 1970s, and in 1975 began collecting information from hundreds of published auction catalogs on as many Reformation pieces as he could find. The result of 25 years of effort was an extensive card filing catalog of Reformation medals. He was just beginning to assign ID numbers to each unique piece. He believed at that time that he had, had a comprehensive feel for the universe of Reformation numismatics, but his sudden death came a month and a half later. So Espy's work was never to be completed and published. His extensive collection of index cards continues to be with Carl Stevens in California. Mr. Espy's Reformation coin and medal collection was sold and would not appear again until 2014, when much of it was sold by its most recent owner, and Mr. Wender Wolke, at an auction under the gavel of WAG in Westphalia, Germany. So a lot of effort, but actually came to naught. This was all before, the advent of the computer. Everything was on index cards, and I've seen these Espy cards. They're all handwritten out. A lot of work went into those. And now I think Reformation numismatists are asking, how can we use this information for future reference? Two significant auctions in Germany. Between 1980 and 2006, the only advancement in the study of Reformation numismatics seemed to come from the publication of higher and higher quality coin auction catalogs from Europe, containing bits and pieces of private collections. And after the fall of the Berlin Wall, the quality of these numismatic auction catalogs just exploded as far as what was available. For the first time, all of these auction catalogs started first with black and white photography, but very quickly color pictures of the pieces that were up for auction. And this greatly aided the interest in and information available for collectors, not only in Europe, but also in the United States. So two prime examples I posit here. First, the anonymous collection auctioned off by Kunker of Osnabrück. This is auction 26 of Kunker in March of 1994. So approximately 500 Reformation coins and medals went up for auction in that auction. And the auction of collector Fichtel sold by Leipziger Münzhandlern in 2006 of approximately 450 pieces. Each of these printed auction catalogs sported the highest quality color photographs of the Reformation pieces and often referred again to the Whiting lot numbers, greatly aiding not only bidders but collectors around the world. So again, two great examples of reference works that continue to be, the lot numbers continue to be referenced today. However, in 1994, historian Professor Thurman L. Smith, who had that quote at the beginning of the hour, began compiling a bibliography of coins and medals of the Reformation. I have a friend, he says, all research begins with bibliography. So bibliographies of Reformation numismatic kind of paved the way for people to understand the discipline or this group of coins and medals, and encourage further research. Thurman's 122-page work was published in 1995 under the sponsorship of the Center for Reformation Research in St. Louis. Their offices are just across the street here. This was the result of a renewed appreciation by historians as they reevaluated numismatics as a previously neglected primary source in historical investigation. So around the mid-90s, Thurman Smith and others realized that numismatics is not just a hobby, but for serious historians, for people doing cultural studies, for art studies, numismatics has something major to contribute in research. But two meetings that set the next 12 years in motion happened in Weimar and also in Wittenberg in 2006. These two meetings would intentionally advance Reformation numismatics in ways that couldn't be imagined in 1983. So 4 people here, they're listed in the first paragraph, come together, kind of the experts in the realm of Reformation numismatics, and they start to discuss the possibility of compiling this CNR, this Corpus Numorum Reformationis in Latin, basically a completely comprehensive catalog of all Reformation coins and medals. This would be an exhaustive discipline, decades-long cataloging of everything under the sun when it came to Reformation coins and medals. However, between the January and April meetings, a completely new situation arose, and I get that quote from the minutes of these meetings. A private collector of Reformation coins and medals had made contact with the group and offered to finance the project, but with the stipulation that the CNR approach, this we will catalog everything known, would be replaced with the goal of cataloging specific institutional collections of important Reformation coin and medal collections in Germany. So the collections in Hanover, the collection in Weimar, and the collection in Wittenberg. This project would begin with photographing the entire Wittenberg. Wittenberg includes the Eisleben and Eisenach Reformation coins and medal collections using the best technology available, and focus, kind of eat the elephant one bite at a time with a collection by a collection approach instead of an everything together approach. And there were similar dreams in the United States. In the United States, similar projects were initiated to advance the study. So I proposed updating older catalogs of significant Reformation coin and medal collections by, again, beginning with high quality photography of each piece using the latest digital photography, especially in catalogs that were not illustrated just because in the 60s and 70s this technology was not available. First, we set on the 486-piece collection at the Philadelphia Lutheran Seminary at Mount Airy in Pennsylvania. So we photographed, weighed, measured the diameters, myself along with Dr. Frederick Schumacher in 2013. So the result is this unpublished 3rd edition that I mentioned before. That catalog, 1st and 2nd, and now 3rd edition, is often referred to as Schreiber or Schreiber. Second, the Concordia Historical Institute 830-piece collection was photographed, weighed, and diameters measured by the two of us in 2014. The result is the Reformation Coin and Metal Catalog published in 2016, which includes extensive references to previous auctions and reference works in North America and Europe. So that is now published and available with color illustrations and plenty of references to previous auctions and reference works. But again, more advances. Brozatis is the kind of the shorthand for this 2-volume work published in 2015. In Germany, the photographing of the Wittenberg collection was completed. Pieces were weighed and measured, and descriptions began to be written. The result was published in 2 volumes in 2015 and is referenced to by the name of the compiler. This is Klaus-Peter Brozatis of Gera, Germany. Over 1,700 Reformation pieces are described with high-quality color photographs and descriptions regularly, including historical background information helpful in understanding the legends and the symbols used in specific designs of the pieces in the collection. And then this was eclipsed with an even bigger project initiated by Dr. Rainer Opitz of Potsdam. So this became even bigger than Whiting or Schnell or Brozatis or the CHI catalog. This grand project was a partnership between Dr. Opitz, Mr. Brozatis, and Kunker, the auction company in Osnabrück, and spanned a private collection, Opitz a collection of over 3,550 Reformation pieces. It's just an incredible collection, private collection, that was now photographed, documented, organized, and then published. What became a 6-volume catalog has now become the most comprehensive reference catalog of Reformation coins and medals ever produced. However, it's unfortunate that the release of Opitz occurred only a few months after Dr. Opitz's death in February of 2019. So he worked on this for decades and did not live to see the final fruit of his labor. So here's a photograph of myself with Dr. Opitz and Klaus-Peter Brozatis and a few other Reformation enthusiasts. This was at the second, the Opitz collection was so big that the Kunker could not auction it all off in one auction. So it was over the course of 4 auctions. This was the second of those in Osnabrück, Germany in 2017. Recent efforts to advance Reformation numismatics. I've mentioned the CHI catalog. Since the death of Dr. Opitz, only a few developments are worth noting. First, Concordia Historical Institute continues to expand its collection and research of Reformation coins and medals. A revised and expanded catalog of over 900 pieces will be published in the next 4 to 6 years. So Concordia Historical Institute in St. Louis continues to solicit contributions that will enhance its Reformation coin and medal collection with the goal of a second revised, expanded catalog in the next few years. Second, a worldwide conference was held in Wittenberg, Germany, hosted by the Lutheran Memorial Foundation of Saxony-Anhalt for 3 days in September and October of 2021. The theme or the topic was the 500th anniversary of Reformation medals. The conference included over 20 presenters giving papers on the historical, social, cultural, and theological significance of Reformation images and legends struck and cast on coins and medals. These papers are now at the printer, and the 440-page volume will be released by the publishers in December of this year or maybe January under the title that is loosely translated into English, Ensigns of Identity, 500 Years of Reformation Medals. I failed to include the ISBN number. If you're interested in that, please contact me after the presentation. Love to give you, or search this on the German site for Amazon. The printed volumes include a 21-page paper in English with the title North American Reformation Medals and the Reformation Numismatic Universe. So this is the chapter that I contributed, and here you see one of the illustrations from that chapter, Reformation Coin and Medal Universe with Jubilee Years. So this shows how traditionally Reformation coins and medals are distinguished from each other. And then you see smaller little circles as far as kind of adjacent or secondary areas of collecting or research when it comes to Reformation coins and medals. The timeline, or the clock face going around there, these Roman numerals designate the Jubilee years. So they would have a Jubilee, Reformation Jubilee, coins and medals would be struck every 50 years. So in 2017, the latest Jubilee year, you see that this is the 10th Jubilee of the Reformation. So you'll see some of this in the literature and even on the faces of Reformation coins and medals. Finally, 2 projects have now been initiated. First, work is proceeding on an English translation of the German Reformation numismatic volume, Hilaria Evangelica, or it's also called Ebenezer, by Christian Schlegel. This was printed in 1719. It's a highly significant documentation of the prized Reformation coin and medal collection now housed in Gotha, Germany. It's hoped this can be published in the next 5 years, giving this catalog, making this catalog available to the English-speaking world. Second, efforts to 3D scan important Reformation numismatic pieces is now underway. I think this is kind of the next chapter in advancing Reformation numismatics, is to give some sense of the mass of these coins and medals using 3D scanning. Maybe holograms and things like that are just around the corner as technology develops. So we get to the top 10 significant Reformation coins and medals produced between 1983 and 2023. This is my list. Other collectors or people doing research in the field maybe have different choices, but this is kind of a chronological run through of what I think are the most significant, sometimes historically significant pieces in the last 40 years. So we begin with the 20 mark East German coin by Heinz Rodewald. He was an illustrator of books and also a medalist in Berlin. This is a unique piece. You see Luther is portrayed with both hands holding a closed Bible. This is not based on any other previous paintings or wood or copper engravings, but this is Rodewald's own unique presentation of Martin Luther. On the other side of the wall, this is the 5 mark coin that was designed by an artist in West Germany, Rosafi Klemm. And again, beautiful representation of Luther, utilizing the German titles of some of Martin Luther's most significant works. So this provides kind of the background turned into the foreground for this Martin Luther coin. Fantastic design. Stateside, again, this is a coin produced in 1983 by Everhard. It's a large coin, a massive coin, with a fantastic presentation of Luther, and on the back a quote, and then the swan, which is traditionally the symbol for Martin Luther. Martin Luther is also often referred to as the Swan of Wittenberg. And again, there's a Luther-Huss connection that is the reason why Luther is linked to a swan. This is a French piece by Pierre Lovy of a younger Martin Luther, with the cityscape of Eisleben, the birthplace and the death place of Luther, on the reverse. A massive art metal coin, quite impressive. Again, back to the United States, Scott Blazek of Arizona produced this in 1996 to commemorate the 450th anniversary of the death of Martin Luther. And again, you see Luther on his deathbed, vowing faithfulness to what he has preached in his life, with family and friends near the bedside. And on the reverse, the Castle Church, or the Church of the All Saints Church in Wittenberg, Germany. This is another 1996 piece by Friedrich Schumacher. This features the last portrait of Martin Luther during his lifetime. This was sketched by one of Martin Luther's students, one of the students in Wittenberg, and that's incorporated on the obverse. And then the local church that commissioned this medal in New York, St. Matthew's Lutheran in New York, on the reverse. Another beautiful Reformation medal was struck for the 500th anniversary of the birth of Katharina von Bora, Luther's wife, by Scott Blazek of the United States. So Katharina is shown on the obverse, and then on the reverse, Luther, husband and wife with children, singing with Martin Luther playing the lute. This was produced in 2011. It's my design, executed by medalist Victor Huster in Baden-Baden in Germany. The obverse shows Luther as a monk with a Latin phrase from Isaiah around Luther. And we'll talk about this. These letters that are emphasized or enlarged in the quote form a secret meaning that we'll get to later. And then on the back, Luther again as a swan, breaking the system of indulgences that was used, promising the forgiveness of sins for money, that money that paid for the St. Peter's Basilica in Rome. Here is a coin also done by Scott Blazek. I apologize for the quality of this slide. This was part of a whole set of silver medals that were struck in the Luther decade, the 10 years leading up to 2017. These were produced showing events that led up to the Reformation. Here you see Luther with a storm cloud on the obverse, and on the reverse we have Luther ducking for cover in a thunderstorm. This thunderstorm is the event during which Luther vowed to become a monk, and again, set the Reformation in motion. This 2014 medal struck in Tombach alloy commemorates the 500th anniversary of the death of Jan Hus. Again, I say that there's this very solid link between Hus of the 15th century and Martin Luther of the 16th century. So we have a portrait of Hus on the obverse, with leaders of the Roman Catholic Church burning his works. And then you see this goose being roasted or on fire next to the portrait. So it's legend that as Hus is being burned alive in Constance, in 1415, he says, "You may burn this goose." Kus means goose in Bohemian, or in Czech. "You may surely burn this goose, but in 100 years, a swan will come that you will not be able to silence." And then 100 years later, Martin Luther shows up and is protected by his prince, and actually does not die a martyr's death, but continues the Reformation for years to come. So you see the swan related to Luther on the reverse, and again, a Latin phrase with chronograms on both front, obverse and reverse. So let's conclude. The 40 years beginning in 1983 reproduced designs used in previous Reformation coins and medals, while sometimes reformulating them in modern ways. However, a few medalists created original portraits of Martin Luther and the Reformers. For example, Heinz Rodewald's quarter-half figure of Luther, clenching a closed Bible with both hands on an unframed obverse, is uniquely his own presentation of the Reformer. Peter Lovey took a traditional portrait of a younger Martin Luther and gave it a modern impressionist style. Karl Verzefi Clem took Lucas Cranach's famous portrait of Luther and added an entirely new background composed of the titles of Martin Luther's most significant writings, emphasizing the close relationship between the Reformer and the words of his writings. The same can be said of the inscriptions accompanying the portrait. Some medalists set on a minimum of verbiage, while others, such as Scott Blazek, tried to include as much wording as possible. Noteworthy is the distinctive approach taken by myself, who for the first time since 1830 made use of a chronogram in his 2011 Reformation medal. So I don't know if you're familiar with these chronograms, but they were in vogue for a while in Europe and then quickly faded out in the early 1800s. But I brought these back. They're kind of fun to formulate. So, for example, this is the legend in the 2011 medal, Martin Luther medal. And this is a quote from the Old Testament. The flower fades, the grass withers, the flower fades, but the word of the Lord endures forever. And certain letters are emphasized, and then if you rearrange those into in the correct order, you get the year that's being commemorated, or the year that the medal was struck. So this, you add these Roman numerals up, you get to 2017. So I don't know if you're familiar with these chronograms, but I've included them in these last two medals that Victor Huster and I have produced. Finally, it is apparent that there is more and more divergence between Reformation medals produced to sell, in contrast to art medals crafted as pieces of fine art. The number of Reformation coins and medals produced without any thought to the actual history they should communicate will unfortunately continue to increase. So you see that sometimes these mass-produced medals for the tourist market are woefully ignorant of the historical details of Martin Luther's life, the Lutheran Reformation, etc. Time will tell when new Reformation pieces are produced in 2030. These are kind of the next big anniversaries coming up. 2030, the 500th anniversary of the presentation of the Augsburg Confession. Again, this is the first Lutheran confession that set down in writing what the Lutherans believed. This Augsburg Confession was presented to Charles V in Augsburg in 1530. And also another major anniversary in 2033. This will be the 550th anniversary of the birth of Martin Luther. Again, a great opportunity to base designs and legends of medals on actual historical evidence instead of just making something that looks attractive that tourists will buy. So I've designated the International Reformation Numismatic Day on the 19th of June, and this is the saint day for Christian Juncker. Remember, this reprint of Juncker was one of the major events in 1983 that referenced Reformation coins and medals. So on June 19th, you can celebrate Reformation Numismatics. Please continue to explore the rich history of Reformation coins and medals. I'm updating the website to include more reference works, updating the bibliography, and just pieces that I think are exemplary when it comes to the thousands and thousands of Reformation coins available to the collector and to the numismatic researcher. So thanks for your time. Thanks for your attention.
All right, then we will do the Q&A portion. I'm going to have you go ahead and stop your screen share. There should be a red button somewhere that says stop share. And excellent. Okay. So we have 2 questions in the Q&A at the moment. Everyone else, go ahead and send in any that you have, and we'll go down the list. What references do you recommend for someone just getting started with a collection of Reformation numismatics?
So I think Whiting, as I mentioned, Whiting is a kind of a no-brainer as far as everyone references Whiting. So if you're trying to look at pieces at an auction or even these later reference works, they'll always refer back to Whiting. You can get these for maybe 20 or 30 bucks. There's still copies floating around. It just depends on these, this 2-volume Brosatus or the 6-volume Opitz. They're fantastic. The problem is, they're printed in Germany. They weigh a ton. So what you spend on buying them, you'll also spend on shipping them to the United States in a way that you don't get them and they're all beat up. So it depends. You want something. Whiting is so portable. You can open it up. It's only a couple dozen pages. But these larger reference works, they're monsters. So unfortunately, both either Brosatus or Opitz, they're not available online. There is yet to be an online reference work or reference catalog for Reformation numismatics. Maybe that will change in the future, but I would begin with Whiting. Schnell is another good one. Zach is a popular one that came out in the 1960s. But again, the photography has gotten so much better in these auction catalogs. The more recent ones, the photography is just beautiful and you can see a lot more detail. So it depends on how far you want to dive in. But I think it all starts with Whiting and then Brosatus and Opitz.
All right. How would one go about collecting this series? Are they widely available?
The series of countdown medals that I talked about are available through the American Lutheran Publicity Bureau in New Jersey. And so you can find them on the internet fairly quickly. Just Google, in quotes, Countdown to the Reformation series, and you'll find them. Maybe some of them have been completely sold out. They did 3 versions. They did the one that I showed was in silver. They also did one in other ones in bronze, and then they made these kind of aluminum, as cheap as possible medals to give to children to kind of get them interested in the Reformation. And all levels are different prices, but some may be sold out now. 2017 came and went, and but I would just Google that and then follow. Again, American Lutheran Publicity Bureau is the entity, the nonprofit that produced those. So happy hunting.
Are there any Lutheran sacrament tokens?
Believe it or not, there are. So if you're a collector or doing research on communion tokens, usually this is a Reformed thing or a Calvinist thing. But in places in the Netherlands and also some other locales in Europe, the Lutheran congregations actually use these communion tokens. Often the ones that come up for auction, they don't say Lutheran, or they don't have a lot of verbiage on them. Sometimes they're kind of crudely made out of pewter or lead. But they, again, the swan is an indicator that, oh, this is a Lutheran congregation that's using these medals or communion tokens. So they're kind of rare. There's a reference work by Donga in Dutch that references some of these communion tokens, but it's kind of a side area of Reformation numismatics that a lot of people don't know anything about. So again, happy hunting, but they're much more rare to find, or they go unidentified and just sold as a lot of communion tokens without any reference to them being Lutheran.
All right. Is there a relation between Reformation numismatics and the Notgeld used during the early years of the 20th century, 1917 to 1921?
Yeah, and again, there's Reformation theme in Notgeld that was as people collected them, both for their historical connections, but just because they're beautiful. So my guess is there's probably, sometimes they come in sets, different denominations for a series. So there's probably, I don't know, a dozen or 20 of these Notgeld that are directly related to Luther and the Reformation. And again, they're fairly inexpensive to find and kind of fun to collect. So that is something that even children could collect, and you're not going to break the bank. And they're beautiful to look at and to display. So again, great window into Reformation numismatics.
Righty. Does the Catholic Church continue to resist Reformation numismatics?
Well, there's a big debate. So when I came out with this Concordia Historical Institute catalog, I put in the front matter, kind of a overview of Reformation numismatics. And I argue that the Luther and the Reformation used numismatics in a more efficient way, as they did the printing press, than the Roman Catholic Church. And I got a little pushback on that. But I think, again, numismatics was used to get the word out of Luther's teachings and the Lutheran doctrines. And so this kind of back and forth began. So one of the functions that we find in Reformation numismatics is a polemical approach or a satirical approach. And very quickly, the Catholics thought, oh, we can do this too. And they came out with double-headed medals attacking both. Well, some of them attacked Luther. Also, Calvin was attacked, and there are anti-Calvin medals that people collect also. So yeah, it was kind of use whatever means are available, and these theologically opposing groups did make use of these, especially satirical medals that made fun of kind of the other side.
All right, then we have one other question in the Q&A for now. So for viewers, go ahead and send in any last questions you have. Otherwise, this one will wrap us up. Can you elaborate a little on the 3D scanning of metals and where that's going?
Yeah, the technology, it's almost there, right? So as you can imagine, scanning Reformation coins and medals, I think it would open up a lot of interest, especially in younger people, to see all the fantastic detail in Reformation coins and medals. But the technology, I mean, unless you're into thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars of scanning equipment, you really need good detail. So we're just on the cusp of this 3D scanning, but Concordia Historical Institute is pursuing that. And I joked 15 years ago that this is kind of where it would all end up, is that teachers could, kind of 3D print examples, enlarged examples of not just Reformation coins and medals, but just numismatics in general, to share with a class, or to show more of the detail. So I think this is kind of the way it's going, and holograms, maybe that's a thing too. But for the average hobbyist or the average collector to purchase 3D scanning and 3D printing software, it's almost there, but not yet. So I'd say, be patient, but I have no doubt that this is kind of the next step in generating interest in what I think is an artistically rich, beautiful area of numismatics.
All right. I don't have anything else in the Q&A, so I think that's going to wrap us up. Thank you so much for taking the time out to present. Always fun getting new little niches in here from presenters. So it was great to learn about.
Great. Thanks for your time.
Of course. And so our next presentation will be starting at 5 o'clock Eastern. We've got Devin Kane talking about Little Louie, the story of how a piece of small change sparked a fashion craze and an international scam. So hope you all come back for that one. And that's going to wrap us up for now. Thank you, everyone, for attending, and thank you for presenting.
Take care.